you,
here.
Brian.
Got me turned around. Okay. Thank you for joining me. So we had Zappos earlier talking about their programmatic strategy and trying to wrestle it to the ground. What are the hallmarks of a brand having, and I know it will depend on the retailer,
Right.
but what are the hallmarks of a retailer having a sort of coherent strategy in place?
Well, I think when you think the hallmarks of a good strategy is there are kind of 4 areas that a retailer needs to cover. They need to look at their audiences, they need to look at their messaging, they need to look at the media, and they need to look at the optimization of it. And you're going to be threading your data kind of through those 4 things. But I think that, that's basically what we see on a tactical level as being kind of the key things. From a long-term vision standpoint, I think what we're looking for is we have this notion of programmatic first, which is the idea that eventually retailers should want to have all 100% of their media spend in programmatic channels, but also that you should be trying to put 100% of your channels into programmatic.
Wait, explain that a little bit. Why 100%? I mean, usually we'll say, oh,
it's a vision.
70 or 75%.
Yeah. It's a vision. I mean, and this is something that we see.
I mean, there's some things the robots can't do.
Well, I think there's a difference between automation and automatons. Automation is something that that helps human beings perform better if you use it properly. But we're not necessarily saying that we're basically going to have robots operating the whole thing.
Okay, so I mean, there's degrees of programmatic, obviously. I mean, replacing faxes and stuff, I don't think anyone's going to really argue about that.
Right.
Okay. What are the pain points to making that a reality?
Well, I think the major pain points for retailers, I think first and foremost, it's the issue of offline and online. Majority of the sales still happen offline. You need to be able to drive people to the store. You need to be able to measure it. And not just measure, but you need to be able to optimize you need to look at what you've learned on how you've driven people to the store and converted and bring that back into into your strategy. A second thing, I think it hits retailers pretty hard, is cross-device. People are looking on one device. They're buying on another, or they're going to the store. I think last consideration that I'd say that's a pain point for retailers is this notion of how they kind of thread their first-party data through a full funnel. So it's not just, programmatic strategies are not just about prospecting, and they're not just about remarketing, and they're not just about retention. It's basically about how you put together that entire customer journey and how you maximize the lifetime value for people over time.
That actually brings up something from the town hall. We heard from a retailer about the digital team not actually getting credit for store lookups.
Right.
Like all these sort of internal things. What's the big, attribution was one of those things that came up again and again. What are the major challenges there with attribution?
With attribution, I think a lot of people tend to think about it as measurement. And yes, there are very valid points about last touch versus multi-channel fractional attribution. But I think one of the biggest things that kind of gets overlooked in attribution is there's what we call the closing the loop, which is basically making sure that after you've got your measurements and your confidence in terms of, okay, we're measuring things correctly, how do you tie it back into your strategy so you're actually targeting people properly? And this loop needs to continue to go around and around and continue to refine itself.
Mm-hmm. Where do people go wrong with attribution?
I think there are 2 areas where they go wrong. First thing is basically this notion of last touch or last click. When we talk about the customer journey earlier and how people are going through the entire funnel, we used to always joke that last touch attribution is a little bit like standing near the cash register and basically like patting somebody on the shoulder as they go up to the cash register and being like, all right, I'm responsible for that. I send them to the cash register.
It's worked for Google.
I think in the early days, in the early days of the internet, I think it's a very effective strategy. And again, it goes back to the funnel. Is bottom of the funnel, there are definitely strategies that work.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I get back to the key thing for attribution is it's not just about being able to measure. People will have different philosophies in terms of how they allocate, different parts, different channels and different placements. But I think the key thing is if you have a philosophy that you agree on, you got to tie it back into the way you're targeting. It's kind of it's a waste in a way to basically do attribution and then not use it.
Okay, so it's a ways to look at it just as a measurement and not as an optimization.
Not as an optimization tool, correct.
Okay. How much of this is tied into mobile?
So mobile, when I think about mobile, I always think about cross-device. And I always think about the fact that, what I've seen anecdotally in different retailers is a typical remark is, 30, 40, in some cases 50% of my traffic is coming from mobile and tablet, but I'm only seeing 5 to 10% of my orders coming from there. And so to me, the issue is that people aren't necessarily buying on mobile. What they're doing is they're shopping and they're looking, and it's definitely influencing purchase. So a lot of times what you see is you see underinvestment in mobile. With attribution and with cross-device, what you start to see is, and also being able to tie the online-offline into it, what you start to see is mobile is influencing purchases and leading to it. So I think what you would see is you'd probably see a bit more investment in mobile when people can actually clearly see the influence it has on the entire purchase.
Is there an example you could give of a client that's doing a good job of tying all of this together?
We work with, we recently introduced an offering to the market called MediaMath Retail, and it's basically, we kind of felt that the market needed sort of a simple all-in-one solution to tie all these things together. And we've been working with a few initial clients. One is a large grocer, and basically, what they've seen as they're tying all these things together is they have a weekly special where every Thursday they kind of they basically show ads to people that are basically in their existing customer database on things that they think that they would be interested in. So they're using their first-party data. They're basically personalizing their messages. They're going after their existing customers. They're addressing them on media where they can find them. And what they're seeing is for every $1 that they're spending to put these ads out there, they're seeing $42 in return. And my understanding is it's about $7 in profit. And so they're seeing a financial return, but the funny thing is they're actually also seeing some insights. So they found that depending on the types of products they show a person, things they know this individual is interested in, they're seeing different types of products they show should give them a bigger basket size. And so we have this kind of famous sort of example in our company of you show somebody broccoli, or so you show somebody cauliflower, and they're likely to buy they're going to buy the cauliflower. If you show someone, that same person, avocados, they're likely to buy avocados and a lot of other things that I guess complement avocados. And so I think in some ways it hasn't been just about the return that you get, which is very important. It's also been about basically insights that you get.
Okay. So one of the big issues when it comes to ad tech and programmatic is how much of the tech stack the marketer should control. How does that apply specifically to retailers?
I mean, I think in our case, I mean, we're, and again, when you look at the entire tech stack, I think we see the whole thing as basically a solution. So putting aside the whole kind of retailer agency kind of role area, I mean, we're very agnostic on that. We see it more as let's assemble a transparent solution. Some of those solutions are within our tech or within the technology that we provide. A lot of them are just basically kind of prepackaged as an integration. But we feel like each retailer is different. So then I'm going to give you kind of a Bill Belichick answer and just be like, it depends. We don't. We
I hope you're being more truthful than Bill Belichick is.
We provide deflated footballs. No, I think that basically it's different for each company. But I think from our standpoint, we just provide the technology. We try to make sure all the pieces are assembled so that either the retailer or their agency can basically operate it.
Okay. Either way. We still have a minute left. Anyone have a question for David? I know we have a couple of microphones around. It's a little bit tough to see. Okay, everyone wants to get to the break. David, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, and now we are going to have